Have you ever been thirsty, truly, desperately thirsty, and turned on the tap before to hesitate? There is a primal instinct in the human brain that fears contaminated water. It's older than language. It's the reason you flinch when you see a stagnant pond. We trust water because we have to. It is the source of all life. But deep down, we know that water is also a universal solvent. It dissolves bodies, it hides secrets, and sometimes it changes. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of a river flowing past your house. You know that sound. It's comforting. It's the sound of commerce, of nature, of history. But when the sun rises, the river isn't brown. It isn't blue. It is a thick, visceral crimson. Tonight, we are traveling down to the Louisiana Delta, to the year 1898. We are going to a night when the mighty Mississippi, the artery of America, stopped looking like water and started looking like an open artery. This isn't a story about pollution. This was decades before industrial dumping laws. This is a story about a town that woke up to a biblical plague and the terrified realization that the past doesn't just stay buried in the mud. Sometimes it bleeds out. So, check your locks, pour yourself a glass of water, if you dare, and let's wade into the deep end. The location is a small, unincorporated settlement just south of Baton Rouge. Let's call it Pointe Noire. It's late October, 1898. The atmosphere in Louisiana during this time is already heavy. The yellow fever epidemics are fresh in memory. The scars of the Civil War are still visible on the architecture and the people. Our witness is a man named Elias Thorne. Elias is a levee watchman. His job is the definition of loneliness. He walks the mud banks with a kerosene lantern and a shotgun, checking for muskrats digging into the clay or cracks that could flood the town. It is 3 a.m. The fog is so thick you could choke on it. Now, the Mississippi River has a smell. It smells like wet earth, rotting wood, and catfish. But this was different. Elias described it later as metallic, sharp, like the air before a lightning strike, mixed with the undeniable copper tang of a slaughterhouse. He stops. He holds his lantern out over the black water. Usually, the lantern light reflects yellow on the brown mud. But tonight, the reflection is wrong. The water moving beneath him isn't churning mud. It's moving like syrup. He dips his hand in. He pulls it out. In the flickering gaslight, his hand is coated in red. He wipes it on his shirt, thinking it's oil or clay. It stains the fabric instantly, and it burns just a little, a slight tingling itch on his skin. Elias runs the warning bell. Now, imagine the psychological terror of a small religious town in 1898 waking up to this. The church bells start ringing. Men come running with torches. Women are clutching their rosaries. They stand on the levee, hundreds of them, holding their torches high, and as far as the light reaches, from the east bank to the west bank, the Mississippi is blood red. I know what you're thinking. It's red clay, right? The river is muddy. It's sediment. That's what the town mayor tried to say. He stood on a crate and yelled that there must have been a landslide up north in the Red River Valley. He said it was just Oklahoma dirt washing down. But here is where it gets strange. Red clay sediment makes water cloudy. It makes it look like chocolate milk. This water was dyed. It was translucent, vibrant, shocking red. And the fish were reacting to it. Catfish were breaching the surface, gasping for air. Garfish were throwing themselves onto the mud banks to escape the water. Then the sickness started. It wasn't immediate death. It was subtle. By dawn, the fog had lifted, but the red color remained. The people who lived closest to the water reported headaches, dizziness, a strange metallic taste in their mouths that they couldn't wash away with coffee or whiskey. The local preacher, Father LeBlanc, didn't care about sediment. He opened his Bible to Revelation 16, verse 4. And the third angel poured out his vial upon the rivers and fountains of waters, and they became blood. Panic set in, real, unfiltered hysteria. People started packing wagons. They thought this was the end times. They thought the river was judging them. But there was one man who wasn't praying. He was a visiting surveyor for the Army Corps of Engineers, a man named Captain Arthur Bell. Bell was a man of science. He looked at the red water, and he didn't see God's wrath. He saw chemistry. He took a rowboat out into the center of the current. The townspeople watched him from the shore, terrified. They thought he would dissolve. They thought the water would eat the boat. Bell dipped a glass jar into the water. He held it up to the sun. The liquid inside was swirling with particles. Not dirt, not algae. It was a fine, suspended powder. Bell rowed back to shore. He poured the water through a cheesecloth. The cloth turned a brilliant, violent crimson. He touched the powder left behind. He rubbed it between his fingers. It wasn't slimy like algae. It was gritty, crystalline. He smelled it, and then he realized why the town was tasting metal. "This isn't blood," he told the crowd, "and it isn't clay. It's paint." Now hold on. Paint? How much paint would you need to turn the Mississippi River, a river that moves 600,000 cubic feet of water, red? You would need millions of gallons. You would need an explosion in a factory. But there were no factories upstream. There was nothing but swamp and cotton fields for miles. Bell knew the geography. He knew the history. And he knew that the river was a graveyard. He took his map. He triangulated the flow. He realized the red streak wasn't coming from up north. It was originating from a deep scour hole, a depression in the riverbed, just 2 miles upstream, at a bend known as Dead Man's Turn. The river levels had dropped to historic lows that month. The current had shifted, carving a new path along the bottom, scouring away mud that had been undisturbed for 30 years. Bell took a dredging crew out to the spot. They dropped grappling hooks. They expected to find a log jam, maybe a rock formation releasing iron oxide. Instead, the hook caught on something wood. Something manufactured. They pulled. Debris floated to the surface. Rotted oak planks, rusted iron bands, and kegs. Hundreds of shattered, rotting wooden kegs. It was the wreck of the Lady of Shreveport. Here is the twist that history forgot. The Lady of Shreveport was a Confederate blockade runner that vanished in 1863. History books said it was carrying gold bullion to pay for weapons. Treasure hunters had been looking for it for decades. But the Lady of Shreveport wasn't carrying gold. Bell pulled up the manifest records from the archives in New Orleans. The ship had been carrying a secret cargo from Mexico, disguised as grain. It was carrying cinnabar. For those of you who flunked chemistry, cinnabar is the ore form of mercury. It is a bright, scarlet red mineral. When you grind it down, it creates vermilion.
the most brilliant red pigment on Earth. It was used in paints, in dyes, and in the manufacturing of fulminate of mercury for explosives.
The ship had been carrying tons of raw, powdered cinnabar ore for the Confederate war effort. It sank. It sat in the mud, preserved in airtight kegs for 35 years. When the river shifted that night in 1898, the current smashed the rotting hull. It broke open thousands of kegs of pure, powdered red mercury ore all at once. The blood wasn't spiritual, it was toxic. The metallic taste in the villagers' mouths, that was vaporized mercury. The dizziness, mild mercury poisoning. The fish jumping onto the banks, they were suffocating in toxic water. The town thought they were being judged by God. In reality, they were being poisoned by a ghost of the Civil War. The red plume lasted for 3 days before it finally dispersed into the Gulf of Mexico. The Army Corps covered it up, terrified of a panic about poisoned water supplies. They labeled it an unusual sediment event and buried the report. But the people of Pointe Noire knew. They knew because for years afterward, the crops near the riverbank grew strange. The Spanish moss turned a sickly gray, and the crawfish caught in that bend of the river, they were always a little too red. We look at a river and we see a surface. We see the reflection of the sky. We see the present moment flowing by. But a river is not just water. It is a timeline. Every mile of the Mississippi is paved with the bones of ships, the ruins of cities, and the mistakes of the past. We think that when something sinks, it's gone. We think the mud covers it up and forgives us. But the river doesn't forgive. It just waits. The Lady of Shreveport waited 35 years to deliver its cargo. It waited until a quiet, foggy night to remind the world that the war might be over, but the poison is still there. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else is down there, buried in the silt, waiting for the current to shift just right? What other secrets are holding their breath in the dark, waiting to bubble up to the surface? That heavy feeling in your chest, that's the realization that the past isn't behind you, it's underneath you. If you want to keep digging up the things that history tried to drown, you're in the right place. Join the Mystery Kode community. Click that subscribe button, not to join a channel, but to join an excavation. We have a lot of mud to sift through, and I can't do it alone. I'm Mystery Kode. Watch the water. I'll see you in the next one.